Many of you know that this summer I had the chance to work with a rabbi in Santa Monica for 8 weeks, learning with him and studying with him. But I don't think I told any of you what my boyfriend was up to this summer. And it may seem a little bit out there, but that's where I'm going to start tonight in my words. Danny got a call one afternoon, on a Thursday afternoon in June. He didn't actually have a summer job at the time. It was mid-June, and he was trying to figure out what he's going to do. He gets a call from one of his colleagues at the conservative yeshiva in Jerusalem, and they say to him, "We need someone to run the program for the summer, last minute. Can you be here on Monday?" And my boyfriend, of course, says, "Sure." It was a very exciting opportunity for him, of course. It was exciting for me to be able to, support him going and having such an amazing opportunity. It was also a little bit sad, but, it's 8 weeks. We can manage 8 weeks, being apart. And we go week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all doing really well. And then middle of week 8, 2 days before he's set to come home to Los Angeles, it was a Thursday afternoon, and he was attending the Jerusalem Pride March. And Jerusalem Pride, of course, happens every year around the 15th of Av. Now, the 15th of Av, Tu B'Av, in the Hebrew calendar, is a day similar to the American Valentine's Day. It's a day meant for love, and that's why the organizers of Jerusalem Pride organized the parade right around then. As many of you know, this year, Jerusalem Pride was not a very joyous occasion. An ultra-Orthodox Jewish man stabbed 6 people at the event. And one of them, young Shira Bamki, 16 years old, succumbed to her wounds a few days later and died. Sadly, the attack was not even the first of its kind. The very same attacker had just been released from prison after serving 10 years for attacking the Jerusalem Pride March in 2005. Mind you, I heard about all of this as my boyfriend was safely on his plane back to Los Angeles. Safely in his body, but certainly shaken, as I was, as anyone who heard this story was. How could someone who professes to love Judaism, to love God, to love commandments, do such a thing? Could he not forget that lo tirtzach, do not murder, is one of those commandments? How could he turn our tradition into something that would condone such senseless violence, such baseless hatred? It seemed even more absurd to me given the calendar. Like I said, the Pride March was scheduled for the 15th of Av, Tu B'Av, a day to celebrate love, of all things. But that's not even, for me, the most ironic. The most ironic is that that day is 6 days after Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which, if you might not know, is a Jewish national day of mourning. It's a day on which we remember the destruction of the first temple to the Babylonians in 586 before the Common Era. A day in which we remember the destruction of the second temple, because we believe that they happened right around that time, if not on the very day. A day that, as we go through Jewish history, tragedies seem to gravitate towards this day, the 9th of Av. And over time, that very day became a Jewish national day of mourning. Like our fast on Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av is one of the other major fasts, a 25-hour fast of mourning. So this seemed pretty ironic to me, that someone who so professes to love our faith, our tradition, could do such a terrible action. It got even more ironic to me because our rabbis teach that the Second Temple was destroyed because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. Literally, hatred that is free, that is given away at no chinam, for free. For the littlest thing, there's hatred. And the rabbis teach this because in the period when the Second Temple stood, similar in some ways to now, there were many different groups of Jews practicing differently and vying to be the one true way to practice, if you will. The rabbis tell a story about this, and they say that when they teach that it was destroyed for baseless hatred, and the story goes something like this, that there were these two guys named Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. It's a little confusing because their names are very similar, but think of it like John Smith and Joe Smith, okay? So you've got Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. And one day, when some other guy, some third guy, was hosting a big rich party, he tells his servant to go invite Kamsa, his friend, instead of Bar Kamsa, his enemy. Well, the servant didn't really know which one to invite, so the servant goes and invites Bar Kamsa. And so Bar Kamsa gets to the party of the rich man, and sometime throughout the party, the rich man, the host, notices that his enemy, Bar Kamsa, is there. And he goes to Bar Kamsa and says, "You're my enemy, get out of here, get out of my party." And Bar Kamsa, not wanting to be embarrassed, to be thrown out of the party, he says, "Since I'm already here, why don't you let me stay and I'll pay you for my food and drink." Seems pretty reasonable, I think, right? And the host says, "No way, you're my enemy, you gotta get out." And then Bar Kamsa says to him again, "Well, let me, if you won't let me pay you for my food and drink, I'll pay you for half the cost of the party." And the host says, "No, get out." "Let me pay for the whole party." No. And because of the hatred of this man towards his enemy, he's kicked out, and eventually the temple is destroyed. The message of the story, I think, is that even in the face of this reasonable enemy, this enemy who was actually standing and ready to talk and put away the bad blood for a few minutes, the man could not do so. He had such baseless hatred in his heart that he wouldn't be convinced otherwise, that he couldn't even listen to a reasonable person who he happened to disagree with. That kind of baseless hatred, I think, is one of the sins that I am thinking about on Yom Kippur, this Yom Kippur, because of my closeness to the event in Jerusalem this summer. But don't be fooled. That kind of baseless hatred, the kind where we don't even allow for reasonable dialogue, that exists here in our own Jewish community in the United States just as much as it does in Israel. We are not blameless here. We are not free of that plague. I also encountered it here in our very own backyard this summer, or our very own digital backyard on Facebook. I noticed it when the Iran deal that President Obama was trying to push and put up for Congress came about. And of course, everyone had an opinion. And everyone was vehement about their opinion, to the point of vitriolic rhetoric, to the point where I saw a cantor in New Jersey post something to Facebook, to his page, and say the implication was that if you didn't agree with him, you were a bad Jew. Naturally, this upset me a little bit. I wrote back, and I didn't write back about the content of the Iran deal. Frankly, I don't care whether you support it or not. It doesn't matter to me. We can have that conversation another time. What I do care about is how we talk to each other. I do care very much that when I wrote back to this cantor in New Jersey, and I wrote on his Facebook wall something to the effect of, our tradition has always been one that is multivocal, that has more than one side. Our tradition has embraced sacred disagreement for thousands of years. I thought I was standing up for the right to dialogue, but of course, it was taken as if I was defending the plan. I was defending the president, which I didn't think I was doing in that case. But there was a silver lining in that instance. The silver lining was that friends of mine from across the political spectrum saw my comment and wrote to me and said, "Thank you." They thanked me, I think, and I know from their words, they thanked me because I was reminding not only this cantor, but hopefully anyone who would see his words and his post, I was taking a stance for the ability to reasonably and rationally take a stance. Cheryl, we might not agree about everything. In fact, I'd be really surprised if we did. But I hope that you and I could have a conversation about pretty much anything, as I would hope with any single one of us in this room. That we could respect each other long enough to have a dialogue, to share our thoughts, to listen even when we expect disagreement, even when the stakes seem high. Because I think that's the only way that we can fight that sinat chinam, that baseless hatred that leads to those kind of events like we saw in Jerusalem, like we see in the rhetoric all over Facebook pages and speeches throughout the country, throughout our own people here. So tonight, our night of Kol Nidre, our night where we say about the power of our words, may we remember that perhaps the easiest form of sinat chinam, of baseless hatred that we can combat, is the kind that prevents us from speaking kindly to one another. The baseless hatred that prevents us from listening openly, even when we disagree. Maybe if the rich host of the party had done so, he might not have thrown out Bar Kamsa, and the temple might not have been destroyed. Maybe if the attacker at Jerusalem Pride had been able to do so, Shira Banki could be alive today. And maybe if you and I can start to do so, we can help prevent the next Jewish national tragedy. Can you hear that song?